These are the three types of homes that look great online, but end up becoming the most expensive, time-consuming, stress-inducing mistakes that buyers make every single year. And I'm not saying these are bad homes. I'm saying these are home styles that can drain your budget if you don't know exactly what you're looking at. I've helped families move all over the Chicagoland area for years, and I've seen exactly which homes turn into money pits and which ones hold up long term. So today, I'm breaking down the four types of homes to avoid in the Chicago area, where you'll find them, what red flags to look for, and if you still really want one, what you should look for when you first walk in. Also, I'll add my favorite type of home that you should put on your radar that most people don't. All right, let's get into number one. These are everywhere in Chicago, but you'll also find a ton of them in the older suburbs that grew up alongside the city before World War II, such as Oak Park, Berwyn, Cicero, River Forest, Elgin, Aurora, Joliet, DeKalb, and this is just to name a few. These homes look beautiful from the outside, the brick, they got character, original woodwork, but behind the walls, you're dealing with 120 years of use and 120 years of Band-Aid repairs. Foundations, they aren't concrete like newer homes. They're often made up of limestone, brick, block. So you probably guessed it by now, but the number one home we're talking about today is the early 1900 homes. I have been in hundreds of these homes between my last career and helping buyers who love these types of homes. Have you ever talked with somebody who swears they want the classic early 1900s Chicago home? Yeah, that was my client last month. He loved the character, he loved the charm, he loved the idea of exposed brick, old woodwork, the front big porches. And after we got a home under contract and spent 3 hours with the home inspector, who detailed all of the home shortcomings, that's when he looked at me and goes, Jay, I just realized I'm not a 1900 home guy. So let me tell you the common red flags in these homes and why he decided this generation of home only look good on paper. Let's talk plumbing. Galvanized plumbing, which over time can cause water pressure issues from the internal corrosion. It happens slowly over time, not like you're just one day going to wake up and have no water. But this begs the question, how long are you going to live here? Do you like great water pressure in your shower? And are you ever going to renovate it to bring it up to the 21st century? And that brings me into one of the scariest ones, original electrical. Now, let's talk about a knob and tube or cloth wiring and why it's such a big deal. First, it was designed over 100 years ago, long before the microwaves, AC units, or anything we use today. The system just can't handle the modern electrical loads, and when it overheats, that's when fire risk comes in. Second, there's no ground wire, which means no safety backup. If something shorts, it has nowhere to go. And third, the cloth insulation usually breaks down over time. It gets brittle, it cracks, it exposes bare wire right behind the walls. Now that's why so many insurance companies either charge more for insurance or outright will not insure the home at all. If you think that's bad, the next one shocks every buyer, and it's the foundation, which is always almost leaking. Most of these were built with limestone, brick, or block. They're not modern concrete like we have today. And after 100 plus years, they're usually leaky from old mortar and Chicago freeze-thaw cycles we get here. They're low basements. They often have ceiling heights of 6'5" or less. And it makes them nearly impossible to finish, unless you're like a little garden gnome. Now they come with potential major repairs. You'll commonly see, again, moisture seepage, efflorescence on the walls, wavy foundations, and floors that slope because the house has been settling for a century. Here's the part buyers don't realize. Fixing these issues can mean drain tile, underpinning, tuck pointing, or even rebuilding sections of the walls. Repairs can range from a few $1,000s to 30 or 50 grand. So if you walk in a 1900 home and the basement feels damp and the ceilings feel low or the floors even feel uneven, that's not old home charm. That's a century of structural wear you need to take very seriously. By the way, if you're thinking of relocating to Chicago or the suburbs, this is what I do every single day. So feel free to give me a call. This brings me to number two. And if early 1900 homes hide the mechanical problems, the next home type hides the financial problems. Problems that hit you all at once in big chunks. Now, I'll preface these are my favorite homes, but you have to be very careful in which ones you choose. And oftentimes, many of them, well, they haven't been taken care of since they were built. and they are absolutely everywhere in the city, which makes them easy to find and to buy. But you'll also find a huge amount of them in older railroad line suburbs like Oak Park, Maywood, and Joliet. I had a buyer looking for these all throughout Chicago, as these are one of his favorite, and well, it took us forever to find the one that fit just right. Often, the pictures will look decent, but they'll only tell you a part of the story. Because if real estate has taught me anything, it's to look for what you don't see. No basement photos, missing exterior shots, missing room photos. It's those things that will automatically warn you everything isn't as it appears. These buildings look like great investments. You live in one unit, you rent the other, most of the mortgage gets covered by the tenant. We're talking Chicago 2 and 3 flats. And for the sake of the video, we're just going to call them Chicago multifamilies. You'll hear buzzwords like house hacking, where you live in one unit and you rent out the other, which is probably the best thing in Chicago that you can do if you do it right. Let's talk about some of the great upsides because there are many. And the red flags here, though, which could leave you piss broke if you make a mistake. The upsides, the tenants are always paying your mortgage, or most of it. You get all the tax write-offs and the appreciation while mitigating your financial burden if the tenant is always paying. Now, many 2 and 3 flats, they offer large layouts, real dining rooms, big living areas, tall ceilings. It makes them so attractive. Oftentimes you can find 1,300 square foot units per floor, plus a basement unit that's usually a little smaller. There's so many of them across Chicago. You can basically move into any neighborhood you like, from Rogers Park way up north, all the way down to the south and the west sides. Now, the real difference here is only the size and the type of the building in the neighborhoods. You'll see graystones in Logan Square, Bronzeville, Humboldt Park, which are limestone facaded, taller windows, usually larger floor plans. Now, the most common you see all throughout Chicago is Chicago 3 flat or 2 flat. It's called a Chicago worker flat. They're simply boxy layouts with front bay windows, and they're basically on any corner you feel like you look at. Now, I'll say some of the biggest 3 flats I've ever seen are in Rogers Park, which is often 3 units that are 3 beds each and a basement. Now, if you see this in person, they dwarf any regular 3 flat worker flat. These all sound fantastic, but let's get into the red flags of these buildings, and there's a few. Most Chicago flats still run on steam or hot water boilers, and many of these boilers are 30 plus years old. They're expensive to replace, they're hard to service, and they're incredibly inefficient. Oftentimes you'll hear people say the basement unit heat is good, the middle's pretty warm, and the upstairs feels like you're in the devil's playground. Now, that's not to say all of them are like this, but you'll hear most tenants complain about uneven heating of these units. So this is something you definitely have to be aware of. Now, these buildings were often owned by families for 30, 40, even 60 years. And the maintenance always seems to be kept to a bare minimum. So you're dealing with old windows, aging electrical, outdated plumbing, patch jobs on patch jobs, and kitchens and bathrooms that haven't seen a facelift since Nixon was in office. And the roofs you'll often see are at the end of life, as they only usually last 15 to 30 years. I was touring a building, and the tenant on the third floor showed me all the places it was leaking in his unit, which is great for my buyer, right? Extra info for us. But there was no disclosure of leaks anywhere, which could lead you to a really, really expensive repair, so be careful. Now, depending on where you live, sewers are made up of different materials, like PVC or ABS. But in the city of Chicago, they're either old clay or cast iron. And here's where you have to be super careful. Clay can be broken, it can be shifted, have root intrusion. It can be an absolute nightmare to deal with if you did not plan for this. I had one buyer who at his own expense always scopes the sewers, and many times he either finds it's clogged, shifted pipes, downright broken in places which can be really expensive to fix under the floor. Now your house hack can instantly turn into a $100,000 renovation if you didn't even plan for it. So if the early 1900 homes test your patience and 2 and 3 flats test your wallet, the next home style tests your sanity as a homeowner because it looks cute, it looks affordable, and it looks like the perfect starter home, but it's secretly one of the most expensive home types to modernize. These homes started getting built in the 1940s all through Chicago and in the western and northwest suburbs. And I can tell you, I've been in thousands of these, and they always have one major flaw buyers are looking for nowadays. Originally, they were post-war starter homes. They were cheap to build, they had simple layouts, they were small footprints. Today, they're one of the trickiest homes to renovate effectively. Did you guess it yet? It's the Cape Cod. So let's go over why this home is secretly probably the worst home to renovate. Cape Cods were never designed for full second floors. The ceilings are low, the walls slope inward, and the insulation, it's usually terrible. In the summer, the upstairs feels like a sauna. In the winter, it's freezing, which means sky-high heating and cooling bills. Who wants that? A lot of homeowners tried to expand their Cape Cods by adding dormers in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And most of these additions, I really don't think were done with permits. So you get sagging roof lines, uneven floors, structural shortcuts, mismatched siding that looks weird. Now, fixing a dormer can be expensive, and many people don't realize the work is structural, it's not cosmetic. These homes were built when people didn't expect open concept living. You get small galley kitchens, narrow openings, tight hallways. You get an awkward room flow all the time. Opening up the walls in the Cape Cod often reveals structural beams or old ductwork that's hard to move, which drives renovation up through the roof, literally. I showed a Cape Cod the other day that had one of the worst renovations I've seen in my life, and you could tell. It wasn't well thought out at all. It reminded me of my daughter plays The Sims, and she just starts slapping walls all over the place just because she thinks it's funny. She's also 6, so maybe it is funny. To modernize a Cape Cod, you often need dormer rebuilds or full tear-off roof, and you have to restructure it, which makes it basically a Georgian half the time. Now, the layout reconfiguration is a must-have if you want that open concept look that everybody's looking for right now. But it also means that you have to redesign the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, the structure, and that's all before you get to do all the HGTV interior stuff. Now, if you're finding yourself having any questions about the Chicago market, give me a call or sign up for my weekly emails where I give you the most up-to-date information. And this last home style is even more dangerous than all 3 of these we just talked about, because this one looks perfect. Too perfect, I might add. This is the home that tricks every buyer every single day. It has new stainless steel appliances, it's got white shaker cabinets, quartz counters, fresh paint, luxury vinyl floors, and you're going to think I'm going to say new construction, aren't you? Nope, not those. But behind these pretty finishes, nothing's been updated. I think you know where I'm going with this. This is usually the first home buyer wants to see because it's fresh, it's pretty, it looks like HGTV. And these were rampant during COVID. In the last few years, same thing. These homes you have to fine-tooth comb when you're walking around. Because when you start catching small mistakes, you start to realize what you just walked into. It's a flip. These are the red flags you have to look for. No building permits pulled. Old electrical panels, older windows, windows installed cheaply or incorrectly, you can't miss that. The finished basements, especially if they didn't pull a permit. You can usually tell it's a flip if it has gray walls and gray floors. Now thank God that trend died because nothing is worse than walking into that same color combo every day. Now, if the cosmetics look brand new but the guts of the home are untouched, absolutely walk away. These flips are everywhere in Chicago and the older suburbs because flippers know buyers fall for the look and they forget to check behind the walls. Now make sure you fine-tooth comb them when you walk through. Don't just look at the finish work and the pretty cabinets. Look at everything you can see. So here's what you should buy instead if the last 3 homes make you want to run for the hills. I call it the older parent special or the grandma special, but you can call it whatever you want. It's the 1980s to early 2000s home. It's not all glitz and glam. I'm not talking purple carpet and blue tiles everywhere, but an older home that was maintained meticulously. I'm talking about a newer roof, newer windows, newer siding, or exterior. The paint's perfect. The type of home you can walk in and literally eat off the floor. People that take care of their homes to this level on the outside usually take care of it on the inside as well. Is everything fresh and new? Probably not. But are you worried that someone's uncle did some shoddy electrical work 10 years ago and now you gotta eat popcorn outside in the middle of the night and watch your house go up in a blaze of glory? Also, probably not. This type of home is one you can live in for years and just do updates as you see fit. Now, if you're thinking of moving to one of Illinois' fastest growing towns, watch this video. And if you want to learn about my favorite town that I visit probably every week, watch this video. I'll see you in the next one.